So welcome to you and to everybody else. We're so happy to have you here. Now, back in 1970, when Gentle World founders Light and his late wife's son became vegan, there was no animal rights movement. There was no online education, and there were no other vegans that they knew of, and no word that they were aware of for what they were doing. Well, guess what? They did it anyway. And today we are welcoming Light and Gentle World Outreach Director Angel Flynn as our very special guests. Welcome, Light and Angel.
Thank you for having us. We're very happy to be here.
Thank you for that introduction.
Now you're sounding a little bit not very loud to me. So speak up and cozy up to the computer, pretend like it's a fireplace and you're in Vermont in February, because we all want to be able to hear you. So
we'll get a little closer.
Okay, so welcome. And I'm just interested in what the world looked like to you in 1970 when you realized there might be another way to live.
Well, it looked a bit as bleak as it looks today. That was the greatest discovery I ever made in my life, was to realize really my path in life, which was to help. When my wife and I went to a movie and saw the way they kill the bulls, for food. When we came out of that theater, we said, well, we can't eat meat anymore if that's what they do. And that started us on a path of what became veganism. We didn't even know there was a word. We actually thought we invented not eating meat. We knew there were vegetarians, but we didn't know anybody who would stop leather and silk and feathers and all that. We thought we invented it at the time. The only other people we knew later were the Dinshars, who were very instrumental in our lives, actually, and in helping us. And of course, Freya still is. And what happened is we got to a point where we couldn't eat with other people. My mother, everybody was afraid we would die, because in 1970, the only what they thought was the only source of protein was the combination of rice and beans. They didn't know there were proteins in plant life. So everybody, including my parents, thought we would die. So they would sneak, meat sauce when they cooked for us, into our food. So eventually we had to stop eating what they were cooking. And we would mention this to our friends. We thought that would be all we would need to do, is mention the plight of the animals, and they would join us, which didn't turn out to be true. But a few people do, and that's how the community began, because we had to separate from the rest of the world, which in a way we still do, but our world we separated from is getting bigger all the time. It's amazing for me to see vegan products in supermarkets, normal supermarkets, to see vegan stamped on different areas, not only food, but TV and everything, where they mention vegan not as a joke anymore, but as a real progressive move. And that can only get better, because it's an idea whose time has come, and we know what that means.
Yes.
Once an idea's time has comes, there's no turning it around.
Oh, that's beautiful. So how did it go from you and son being vegan to Gentle World, an intentional community?
Well, my folks owned a resort hotel in the upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains, if anybody knows where that is. And there were all the staff were young people, and of course we would talk to them about what we had learned, how they hurt animals. That's our dog celebrating his dog month. And eventually the world was a place that didn't understand, and still doesn't understand the truth of that. It was the first time I knew an irrefutable truth. It was the first time. Everything else I knew at the time, I was about 29. It could have been refuted by somebody. I thought I knew this, I thought I knew that, but if some expert came along, they could disavow me of that thought because it wasn't ingrained in me. But the fact that the animal abuse was cruel and cruel was wrong was an irrefutable truth. It's still an irrefutable truth. And it's really all you need to become vegan. It's the opposite of that is cruelty. And we can't live with cruelty on this planet, as we're seeing more and more with wars going on and talking about nuclear war. It's I hate to say, but it's a bit of an insane asylum. And that's one of the most insane things they do is kill. And the separation of killing animals and killing people is not separate. It stems from the same lack of empathy, which has to change. And I do see it changing. It's the most hopeful thing I see on this planet is the move toward veganism. At least in this country, I'm not familiar, outside of it, but I see what's happening here. It's just getting more accepted. It's a wonderful thing, and it's miraculous for me to witness, actually, after 52 years of being vegan, to see it finally, receiving acceptance from people I never thought it would.
Oh, so true. So either one of you, Light or Angel, just tell us a little bit about the mission of Gentle World. What do you guys do, and what do you hope to effect?
Well, it started as an intentional community, and as we were discussing, Light and Sun became vegan at this time when nobody else was. And as they were talking to people about it, those people who understood and felt the same way kind of wanted to join forces. So it became, a commune, or what you would call an intentional community. And because they had this very strong mission about wanting to just awaken people to an awareness of the animal situation, non-human animal situation, they began developing recipes. That was kind of the first thing was, hey, let's make the food taste better so people can be more open to this idea. And in 1981, they published the very first full-length vegan cookbook in the United States. And with the publication of that book, Gentle World actually became an educational organization, a nonprofit 501c3. And so at that time, it kind of became, okay, well, what is this mission? It's to awaken people to this vegan awareness. And so following on from there was cooking classes, seminars, workshops, consultations, just anything that they could do as a group of volunteers to help raise vegan awareness. And following from that was some major events like 2 celebrity banquets. I wasn't there for these times, so I have the broad strokes, but those are some major accomplishments. And also the publication of two of the first vegan nutrition books in the 1980s, Dr. Klaper's book, Vegan Nutrition, Pure and Simple, and Pregnancy Children, the Vegan Diet. And of course, this Gentle World's history spans decades. So in these years, there was the opening of a restaurant on Maui to help people learn about incredibly delicious vegan food, the publication of another cookbook, and then the opening of 2 educational centers, one in New Zealand and one here in Hawaii, where we are now. And of course, we have our website, we have a newsletter, and we have had a visitor program. Right now, it's on pause because of COVID. But for quite a long time now, we have been welcoming people here to our centers to give them, like a week or 2 weeks in a vegan environment to learn what it is to be vegan, learn how to cook, learn how to eat, learn how to garden, and just sit and talk with longtime vegans who can help them understand what it's all about. Because one of the things that's happened as veganism has grown, people are much more aware of the word, but in some ways, the original meaning of the word has become a little bit confused, a little bit diluted. And so some people come to us, kind of at the brink of wanting to become vegan and they don't really know what it really is. So we try to help people understand, this is a really a very important, very powerful stand against nonviolence. It's a commitment to stand for nonviolence. It's a commitment against cruelty and for justice. And we try to help people understand it on that level so that when they go out into the world, they're going out there with a definition of veganism that can really stick.
If I may, we became the food people. That was our approach to having people convert to veganism, was to make the food delicious. Otherwise, who was going to change? So we became the food people. We learned, at the time, we had the best vegan chef that we knew of in the whole country. Of course, now there are hundreds of them, which is it's a source of pride in a realistic sense to see what's going on with the change toward veganism. I know it's nowhere near enough, but it's heartening. And it's one of the few things nowadays in the world that is heartening. So we became the food people. We made, including opening a restaurant, on our door where McDonald's has that billion served, we had over our door a million saved, which I thought at the time, and still do, was kind of cute and meaningful.
It's amazing because nowadays people come into veganism and there's everything you could possibly want. There's ice cream, there's yogurt, there's cheese, there's all sorts of different meats, and now they're doing seafood and all these different things. But back then, there were no alternatives. There weren't really health food stores or products like that you can now buy and do it so conveniently.
Absolutely. We thought we had stopped ice cream forever. We didn't think we'd ever get ice cream again, or many other things. Shoes, we had to travel, I don't know, halfway out west to get a pair of non-leather shoes. Now, the world has changed in that way, and it's one of the few good changes I see.
And I believe that Gentle World brought us the first vegan medical doctor who was active in this movement in the United States. Some of you came to the Vegetarian Summerfest. It was either 1983 or 1984. I just know my daughter was in my arms, so I'm not sure exactly how old she was, but she was a baby. And everybody had this kind of scuttlebutt. There's a medical doctor here. There's a medical doctor here. Well, that turned out to be Dr. Michael Klaper. And I remember thinking, oh, we have a medical doctor now. Well, everything will change. Well, everything has changed. It's just taken a while. But you have
Dr. Klaper is still doing amazing work. He's an absolute powerhouse and just seems to do more and more every year. It's absolutely amazing what he's doing for the world, educating the medical students and everybody in the medical profession. He's trying to provide really excellent educational resources.
Yeah, wonderful man. And he lived with us about 5-6 years, I believe. Something like that, 5 or 6 years. Yeah, he made some major changes in our lives and healed not only people when he lived with us, but he used to stitch up turtles that were, tortoises, big tortoises that were run over by cars and crack their shells. He found a way to sew them up and to heal them. And many other animals, cats, dogs, whoever was hurt.
There was once a time where one of the Gentle World members rescued a frog out of the mouth of a snake. So the frog was being bitten by the snake. One of the members pulled the frog out, and Dr. Klaper stitched the frog up, which is just an incredible story because you think about when doctors go through medical school, it's kind of an unavoidable part of medical school, at least back then, from what I understand. They dissect a lot of frogs. So that one experience of stitching the frog up was like the opposite of that, like a healing somehow.
By the way, that frog healed, and it must have taken 30 stitches. It healed in about 3 or 4 days, and we put it in our lake, which was a very happy moment to see that frog swim with the great alacrity.
Wow.
Yes, that was quite a moment for watching stitching instead of cutting a living animal. Yeah.
So this was also the era when you were doing the celebrity banquets. What gave you that idea and what were those like?
That was actually my wife's son who thought of that. It was National Vegetarian Day or something. And my nephew was River Phoenix, and of course now Joaquin Phoenix is my sister-in-law's children. So with him and Martha Plimpton's help, and what was the top 40?
Casey Kasem.
And Casey Kasem, who became a vegan through Dr. Klaper. He was a vegetarian, became a vegan, a wonderful man, by the way. And we thought of having a banquet with celebrities. And at the time, we sent handwritten invitations to every celebrity we could think of, and used River's name as a come on, that he's going to be there. And we had celebrities back then, a lot of them that people wouldn't know now, but we had, I'm going to put on my glasses, just read a few names that you know.
Sidney Poitier,
Sheena Easton, Danny Glover, and Martha Plimpton, River, and Drew Barrymore, who was a kid at the time, must have been about 15. They all came to this banquet. We fed them 21 meals from 21 different countries. The banquet back then cost us, I'd say, about $20,000, which interestingly, we made back, because after the banquet, we had so much food left over that we filled Spielberg's freezer and many other, rich, famous Hollywood people. We filled their freezers. They didn't even ask how much money. They just said, fill my freezer, because they could afford anything, I guess.
They didn't do the banquet as a fundraiser. It was all free. Everything was free. It was designed to be an outreach event. The tagline was to inspire those who are an inspiration to others. So this is back before, celebrities were becoming vegan and then, sometimes dropping out later on. This is before anybody knew about veganism. In fact, you didn't even call it vegan, right? It was a vegetarian then.
Total vegetarian, they made it, even with our cookbook. Nobody knew what the word meant.
The thought was that if somebody very high profile actually became vegan and experienced wonderful changes from it, then it would put it on a whole other level of visibility. The idea was to bring veganism into the spotlight.
With delicious food, that was the key. The food was delicious. Yeah, that's the important part. It has to be delicious.
Yes. So fast forwarding to 2022, we look around at the world and we see veganism is growing. Animal rights is a force to be reckoned with. And yet, at first glance, the world looks like a terrible mess. So what do you do with all this after 50 plus years, Light?
You develop a lot of patience. One of the things you do, it's moving in the right direction, and it can only go forward. It's going to take, I thought in the beginning, it would take 10 years. Mm-hmm. And certainly for everybody I knew to be vegan, it was such an obvious truth. They're hurting these animals, period. That should be enough. Let's not do that. It didn't work that way. Often that's 52 years ago. So I wasn't right about that calculation. But I still have hope. As I said, the most hopeful thing I see. And it's increasing every day. And it's young people who are getting into the real, of course, with the internet's a big help, because they can see what was kept hidden for so many years. I never even thought about a slaughterhouse when I was in high school. And nowadays, of course, they can push a button and see the cruelty that goes on. And I think that's going to make a big change, the internet. And plus, people talk to each other. Young people can talk to each other like they couldn't do before.
We praise the divine intervention.
and that too.
And also have faith that social progress is subject to things like tipping points and things like black swan events. I mean, things can happen unexpectedly that change things dramatically that you never could have foreseen. So progress might look like it's going at a certain rate, and then all of a sudden something happens and it becomes exponential. So we hold out hope for that kind of.
At one time, a few years back, we thought it would be mad cow that would become a pandemic and help people to stop eating them. But so far that hasn't worked. But something, in any case, it's moving forward. And
Yes. Well, your nephew has produced a splendid new documentary called The End of Medicine about antibiotic resistance and zoonotic diseases. And because we know that there are people out there who are not sadly interested in animals, they don't agree with our views of nutrition, and they don't make the connection with the environment, maybe these newer topics will get some interest there in the healthcare field in particular. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, the environment, that is something you didn't know about it hurting the environment in 1970. The truth is, it's the panacea. Everything gets better. Everything gets better in the individual, and everything gets better in the world. There's no downside to it. Veganism is the answer to pretty much every problem we have. Not every, but most of every problem we have.
Well, the animal farming is becoming seriously unsustainable, and that's going to, they just won't be able to keep doing it eventually, between the water drying up and the climate change and all of that. It's coming to a point where it won't be able to continue.
Well, thank you both so much for being here. Thank you for adding a great deal of light to our afternoon or morning for you in Hawaii. Thank you for all that you do. And I hope that you can stay around with us until the end. And if you do have to leave, we just wish you every kind of blessing, and may Gentle World thrive and prosper on into the future.
We will stay around, but I want to leave you with something I wrote everything's a long time ago after a certain age. It's something I wrote a long time ago. If you would walk toward truth.
If you would lead the way.
It's so long ago, I don't remember it. If you would lead the way, walk toward truth, for there are those who follow, guided only by your footprints.
Thank you.
I'll leave you with that, but we will hang around.
And thank you for the beautiful service. It's very uplifting and empowering. So
we're grateful for it. Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thanks for all the inspiration.